Hi, and welcome back, everyone. Or for those of you just joining us, Chris Ludwig here, Editor-in-Chief at Automotive Logistics, and my pleasure to welcome you to Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Live. We're getting into the home stretch here, and as is, that's why I'm so pleased that we're, it's already actually appearing on my screen, so pleased that we're bringing such a unique panel to you shortly to be discussing automotive supply chain and logistics reinvention. I appreciate that perhaps for many, it's journalists like me who maybe overemphasize the reinvention and transformation aspect because, it makes good headlines. But I think as the event has shown, there are many aspects of this sector which certainly are in the midst of great change, and exciting change too, as we heard right from the beginning of the event. But of course, it's not all about throwing away what we have either, right? I mean, one thing that this crisis has shown is actually just how resilient the supply chain has proven. And almost everyone has been somewhat surprised by how the industry has managed to bounce back in many ways. But nonetheless, we're looking for lessons, and we're looking for things we can take forward and grasp at the opportunities before us. And I think the panel or the experts to discuss it with me are here on the screen. And so it's an exciting opportunity for me, and also hope for our audience to put questions to them about the areas of transformation, change, and improvement and opportunity in the supply chain. So I'd like to welcome back to start Martin Corner, Vice President, Global Supply Chain Logistics at Volvo Cars. Martin, who joined us, of course, right at the beginning of the event, and members of his teams have also been with us as well. Scott Cornell, the Chief Operating Officer at Glovis America, of course, a key provider for the Hyundai Group, but also, as we've learned in this event, serving other manufacturers too. Miguel Tavera, welcome back as well, who yesterday gave us such a fantastic and interesting presentation on GM's role in the recovery efforts. Miguel is Director of Global Inbound Logistics and Container Design, and is here to be able to share us a bit more insight on the inbound and container developments at General Motors. And last but certainly not least, Chris Stiles, Senior Director, Supply Chain Management Logistics at Nissan North America, here to give us perspective on the developments from Nissan across the region. So welcome, first of all, to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again, and welcome back for those of you before. But let's just kick off. I mentioned the resiliency that we've seen and we've heard from many, but for some of you who are joining us for the first time in particular, I'd like to just kind of start with a little bit of an update on where we are in terms of your operations and where you may see some current risk, if there's any risks in this stage as we've come out of obviously the shutdowns and we're well into ramp ups, where you're seeing risks in the supply chain and logistics that we should pay attention to and try to address. So if I can start with you, Chris, from Nissan, as we haven't heard from you yet at the event.
All right, thanks, Chris. Hello, everybody. I guess just kind of where we're at. Our plants are all back operational, running normal shifts. From the demand side, we're seeing some promising really kind of results from the demand side. Obviously, that's putting the monkey back on our back from the supply chain side to make sure that we're maintaining production. Obviously, risks are still going to be around supplier capacities and their manpower as they've come back online, and kind of the ups and downs with attendance and making sure that the suppliers, have the people as well as our facilities. And then another key risk factor that we're seeing, and I think some of the other members here will speak to as well, is really the driver capacity, especially on the outbound logistics side. We're seeing a really slow return from a driver standpoint to maintain finished vehicle distribution. So that is something we're trying to work through with all the service providers right now.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Some obviously some key risks that are there. We'll do a little bit of the round robin to kick off. So, why not turn to you, Scott from Glovis, to give us a sense of what some of the key risk factor for you that you'd like to make sure we address in the supply chain logistics.
Yeah, well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be with everybody today. I echo exactly with Chris there. We, it's a people business still. People are what produce our economy. People in our workforce, understanding how our workforce is coming back, understanding how our supplier base is coming back. So I would say the greatest effect that we're now seeing is that we absolutely are expanding relationships, expanding our network of partners, because the backup role, the expanded role of others to bring into your network is more important than ever. So I don't think we're ever going to turn back from this in terms of the learn and the lessons from understanding our workforce, understanding our supplier challenges, and keeping that strong, diverse network that can fill in for each other, because there's pockets that are working very well, and then there's pockets that aren't working well. So we're excited about the new relationships formed in the last say month and a half to get back enrolling, and we're looking forward to taking those new relationships into good partnerships and longer partnerships.
Absolutely. The people side of this business is something that has certainly not abated and seems only to become more relevant even as we move deeper into some of the areas of technology. Let me turn to Miguel. From General Motors' point of view, in the logistics and particularly the areas in which you're responsible, inbound logistics, where are you seeing some risks that we should address and make sure we have an eye on in the supply chain?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris, and thanks a lot for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. So happy to be here. So let me go back a little bit to Chris's point. We're up and running to a point. All plans are full steam ahead, and I really would like to say thank you to all our teams and our providers and carrier providers, because they've been extremely fundamental in supporting us going back live, if you will. I think I'd like to comment of at the end of the day, this is a people business, and what brought us here, if you think about it, it's the unfortunate situation of a pandemic. So we're still tackling challenges associated to absenteeism and associated to operations of availability, to Chris's point, and Scott, in the hallway environment. But I believe probably the largest risk continues to be the unknown, right? So what's going to happen probably at the second wave, the so-called second wave? So our networks are extremely interconnected if you think about it. And even we're seeing right now how the different pace of recovery of different countries or different locations, or at the beginning when we started in China, how this immediately got us working and got us really busy early in the year. So if I were to summarize, potentially the risks to me are two. One is that what's going on with the pandemic and what is the unknowns that are still yet to come. And the second one, the pace of recovery in places like, for example, Mexico, or the places in Europe, or the second wave associated to it.
Absolutely. So obviously a lot unknown, and as I think you raised there, Miguel, and when we think back to that early part of the crisis in China, all of the communication channels which had to open up very strongly and connect really strongly. And I guess if I could echo some of the lessons that I think we've been learning and hearing about over the last few days, it's that those will need to stay as open, if not more so, potentially as we move into this next phase. So let's bring back Martin Corner from Volvo. Obviously, Martin, we kicked off the event on Tuesday, and so we know that there's a lot going on with Volvo. So, but for yours, is there any other risks that you'd like to highlight, that we haven't touched upon that we should address across the supply chain?
I think there's been some very nice points. I realize there's some rare sun shining on my face here and making me look like a ghost. No, some great points by everybody else, actually. And I like the human angle. Probably a more, maybe a macro and then a more prosaic risk. I think what will be interesting is how governments around the world tackle the second wave, and whether they use science or politics to determine local lockdowns, changes to society. I was speaking to one of my team members in China yesterday, and they're more or less back to normal in Shanghai, going on packed commuter trains, and actually the virus isn't spreading, which is quite encouraging. So at a macro level, I think this sort of political and scientific evidential approach is going to be interesting, because in the first wave, I think there was more panic related to politically being seen to be very decisive, and maybe we'll be more scientifically led in the second wave, I hope. More prosaically, I think from a supply chain perspective, Short term, I think the vessel schedules are the most problematic at the moment because they're returning to normal. So we've either still got a level of blank sailings going on that's sort of getting back as capacity comes in, and or when capacity is coming in, we're getting a lot of port congestion. And when you look at the outbound side, obviously we have our usual churning month-end situation, and it's impacting the sort of financials. So our relationship with the sales companies is a bit tight. And then I think something I mentioned when we opened, whilst we did very well from an agility perspective in keeping things moving through the deepest parts of the pandemic, we've probably created a lot of structuralized premium freight routes, which I'm struggling to see how we rebuild some of those, because we keep drawing from the pipeline. We've removed the buffers, we've put things on air freight, and the capacity of the part suppliers to refill means from a logistics perspective, we've probably got a long horizon in this sort of premium style rotations. So I think that's my biggest. And the final one, and I'm sorry to mention it being British, for European market is Brexit. However we dress this up, the UK is still, I think, the second biggest car market in Europe after Germany. And there's a significant amount of critical suppliers who we all take parts from. So the fact that there's still uncertainty on a trade deal is unbelievable, actually. So we might need to start very soon making some decisions on stockpiling, pushing cars into the market, which are based on this uncertainty. So yeah, that's probably my summary of the situation.
Thank you, Martin. I mean, there's some really very important points raised there. The Brexit one, believe it or not, I think it's maybe one of the first times we've heard the B word here.
Right at the end.
Yeah, right at the end. For those of you watching who don't follow it with bated breath as we do here in the UK, we certainly are. It's not a very encouraging point, shall we say, in the negotiations, and seeming as though that those barriers are increasingly likely or almost inevitable in some ways. But that maybe is a quick transition to something, Martin, that we mentioned the other day, or rather, at least you and I did. I'm not sure if we did on air. Custom side of things, which I believe is something that has come back to Volvo and your organization kind of in-house, maybe in a new way. And Brexit just makes me think of that, really, because that would be a particularly headache coming into your team. So, on that trade side, which has come up in this conference too, what's the reason, first of all, that a company like Volvo would, the logistics group would take that back over kind of in-house, and what do you see as the kind of key challenges around that you need to handle?
Yeah, well, thanks for raising that. I mean, I know we did discuss it off air, actually. Yeah, I mean, I when I took this job, I was quite frankly surprised that it was part of my team. I couldn't see possibly how it added any value, and it was something that usually was managed via finance and a broker in my past experience. And I think what I soon realized is that actually by bringing it in-house in the logistics team, Volvo first up really on a line-by-line basis made sure it was paying the right level of duty on its parts. So they made a huge reduction in their overall duty payments. And then, of course, the world became more complicated due to a few political situations that occurred, that a couple of the panelist colleagues live in the country where that occurred. And our footprint of where we were selling cars to and from was dramatically challenged from a duty perspective. So we had to make some industrial decisions of potentially taking cars that were built in China and putting them to different markets than the US, for example, and vice versa. So we had to really make a big change to our industrial footprint, and having that expertise in-house to make the duty assessments was crucial. I mean, the light-hearted comment is, I think my customs head is now saying he wants as much disruption as possible because it makes him very valuable. But joking aside, but actually more interestingly for me is the value that duty can bring upstream in the car industry. And there's things that are blowing my mind in that. For example, with electric vehicles, we have a feeling that if we send the car to the US and we do the software upgrade in the US, we don't pay duty on the software pack in the car. I might not be getting this 100% right, by the way, because I'm an absolute novice on customs. But if you think of the scale of that, as an amount of money, us putting some sort of logistics dwell time to make that change from a profit perspective on the vehicle could be huge. And he's also explained to me that, for example, how we design the configuration of modules of parts in the vehicle as well. If we configure it badly, you can end up paying a higher duty. But if you swallow high duty parts within a module that's in a low duty category, again, there's some massive benefits. And so it's starting to blow my mind a little bit. And I think from a strategy perspective, we need to get these duty experts upstream, particularly in the R&D side when we're designing new vehicles, because in real terms, what they can save blows away the manufacturing cost sort of savings we tend to make and the logistics savings we can make. So I think it's a fascinating area. Like I say, I'm an absolute novice, but I'm now sold on why this is a really strategic thing to bring in-house and work on.
Thank you, Martin. I think it's raised as a key point, and something that again I would look to our audience to say, that's in-house at Volvo, but clearly that expertise and insight and understanding is something that needs to be built up, and the systems that can support that. Let's turn. I mean, we could talk about trade, I'm sure, for the rest of the session, and I could really annoy my colleagues on the panel if I want to really drill down into the China trade war or USMCA. But before I cause them any more gray hairs, let's talk a little bit more about the topics on electrification, which have kind of been threading through the event, and Martin and I kicked off. And maybe if I turn to Miguel, I mean, I want to go on something kind of practical on it. You're in the inbound logistics and containerization, and can you give us a sense of how electric vehicles and battery production might impact on the packaging equipment and the container systems? Because this is something that many people have been asking throughout the events, and I appreciate that the details might not be there yet, but if you started to look into that.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, this is a very dynamic environment, a very dynamic world right now, and different things are changing. So, yeah, of course, and from a packaging perspective, our team is actually very focused right now in really understanding what are the new components that we will have to manage between now and whenever we start launching EVs. Right?
Oh, sorry, Miguel, we've got a little bit of interference on the line there. I think it might have just seized up a bit. We'll make sure that Miguel gets back as soon as possible. In the meantime, perhaps I can just bring Chris Stiles into it. And yeah, I mean, Nissan's already been building the Leaf in the US, and there's obviously further plans in the group to I believe import some other electric vehicles, and I'm sure over time we'll see that develop too. So how are you looking at it in the supply chain? What impacts is it having on your logistics and changes that you're anticipating?
Well, you're right, Chris. I mean, we've been doing electric vehicles for quite some time, so that has helped as far as giving us some level of expectation when it comes to packaging, for example. I mean, the investments are pretty significant, so we got to get it right. And as technology is changing and electrification kind of models are changing, the batteries are changing, we're having to adjust, but trying to stay in front of it. To Martin's point, upstream as much as we can as well. Just trying to understand what are those true requirements, because those are significantly high cost parts that you're moving, right? So the packaging is critical to make sure that we maintain the integrity of those parts. So we've got teams around the world that's what they focus on. And there's been some trial and error, but overall I think we've done a pretty good job of staying ahead of it.
I mean, there's definitely some big costs involved there too, but it also sounds like there's some opportunities potentially for efficiencies if we get that right too, in terms of the different part numbers, and then maybe some even sustainability topics there as well.
Yeah, there can definitely be some efficiencies, and if you kind of relate it to what we would do maybe with kind of our global packaging models for other types of parts, where we look at optimization methods around the world. Can we when packaging arrives at a certain destination, does it make more sense to divert it next, maybe to an alternate before it finally makes its back to its original origin point? So that is something that we're looking at as well.
Fantastic. So I believe we've got Miguel back. So Miguel, sorry for that. This is a part of our Brave New World. We have connections sometimes. You were mentioning that the teams are very engaged in looking at the types of components that they're handling in impact cell packaging.
Yeah, so I apologize for that. So absolutely. So what I was trying to say here is that obviously all the sourcing is happening as we speak, and different things are taking place. But our team is really engaged in developing the packaging for all the new components that we haven't done before, right? And as it evolves, it forces our team to be pretty creative and fast to adapt to the new parts as they come along. So especially when you start getting into, I think you mentioned that battery production or hazardous materials, if you will. At the end of the day, it is, if you go back to basics, if you will, it's our objective. I think Chris was saying a little bit of that. The principles remain the same, right? We're still developing packaging plans that in reality are focused in the operator safety. We want to protect the quality of the part, but also want to make sure that it's efficient for both logistics and manufacturing. So I think our team has done a fantastic job there, and will continue to do so. I think at the end of the conversation with Chris, I heard a little bit the point of sustainability. We're taking the advantage of actually increase our sustainability initiatives in packaging, not only in the EVs, but also in all the different packaging that we're developing as we speak. So that's hopefully this time you came across the message. So sorry
Absolutely.
for the disruption. And
no, not at all. Loud and clear. Excellent. Wonderful. Let's bring Scott into this discussion. And now, Scott, we had with some of your colleagues had a great presentation or a discussion yesterday with Lucid on the outbound side in terms of handling electric vehicles. And I thought, maybe this is another opportunity though for you to point to if there's other considerations as we see that grow and becomes a more important part of what Glovis does for both the core customers, Hyundai, Kia, who have big plans on this side as well, and indeed, as we saw with Lucid, for other customers too. Apologies, Scott, you're muted. If you can just unmute.
Oh, okay. How's that? Sorry about that. No, it's exciting times at Glovis. We're very fortunate to work off a very strong asset base in our deep sea ocean vessels. It gives us an opportunity to have relationships with just about every OEM in the globe. And those relationships are really helping with transforming Glovis into our next role, which is a full SCM, inbound and outbound finished vehicle logistics. The new relationship with Lucid, we're very proud of. That's a role where on the outbound finish side, you have a brand new factory in Arizona. We're going to see factories coming online with Tesla in Texas, probably more manufacturing coming in Arizona from another startup EV. So the electrification and the EV environment is bringing in some interesting new players. It's giving opportunity for manufacturing that can come up, I think, much quicker than we've ever seen before. An assembly factory for an EV car can be built in just a small percentage of the time that a full old-fashioned, IC factory. So we see that the country here in the U.S. is going to be dotted with startups. A little bit back to what we talked about on the haul-away side. It is going to stress haul-away, the new networks that will be designed. And one of the things we're doing here at Glovis is that, we always reference track and trace. That was always the catchword, visibility and logistics and such. I think we're past that stage in our development. Now it's almost given that the visibility, the control tower is there. The next step for us is really, the intelligence that come out of network design, the programs we're working with. And, going back again early, it is still a people business. It takes people to get these systems to understand some trial and error. But, like I mentioned, very exciting times to see startups, to see new relationships, to see systems building a network that's more encompassing the whole U.S. with production. And on the outbound side, we're very fortunate. The rail carriers that we work with, a couple years back, Precision Railroad, they seemed like they were being tough on everybody, but I'd really like to compliment, the rail carriers, all of them that we're working with, CSX, Norfolk Southern, UP, BN, KC. They're really very engaging with us, and it'll be interesting as we keep, connecting the new manufacturing across the U.S. We really appreciate the railroads and the haul-away carriers, and really working together on this new environment of outbound logistics.
Fantastic. Well, you raised the outbound side, and that's a good trigger for me to bring Martin in on I can quote back to you, Martin, what you said when we opened the conference, and I'm sure you echo the thanks to the network too, but I think Stone Age was still nonetheless the adjective that was used. So I think relating that to the electrification side, we spoke earlier with your colleague Anna Weiner about how you feel that electrification brings, how the Volvo feels that brings a need for speed, brings a need for a lot more flexibility and dynamism in the outbound chain. Maybe, to come back to that point, what specifically you'd like to see happen and for carriers and providers to do to support that?
Yeah, I do want to pass my thanks to the network. I know we do. We achieve a lot with brute force and human capital and the endeavors of all the people involved. So I think let's not go away from the positives, but I think it's more that, particularly for Volvo Cars and the direction we're going, I think there's been well covered by my colleagues. The industrial system itself, it's challenged fundamentally, but on the outbound side, I think for us, we will go very fast in the segments we operate into omni-channel, multi-speed, different business models. So we'll have electric cars probably moving towards being sold online in a high percentage of our sales. We've got different types of subscription schemes. Those subscription schemes become more complicated because the car will be handled a number of times quite dynamically in the future. And I think how we somehow create an end-to-end outbound value chain that probably overall reduces the total amount of stock that we have holistically, but positions it in very, I'd say, strategically critical points, maybe regional hubs that have levels of PDI, PDS style services to take the return vehicles and service the cars going out. And at the same time has all the infrastructure to manage the EVs as well. And on top of that, the real speedy precision from the transport contracts, because if we take the cars further away from the end customer in these main hubs, somehow we need a downstream network that's still very fast. So our systems, our reactivity, our contract accuracy also comes in. So I see that as a revolution, actually. It's a transformation. It's going to be highly complex. Some of us are going to have to be brave because we're going to have to move from the way we cost and deliver our sort of end-to-end current business model to be something that will be multi-touch, multi-speed, more servicing upstream. And then again, from a business perspective, it's how do we balance all of the costs in the end-to-end value chain moving forward, because the whole business models will change. So I recognize most of the OEMs will go through this at a different pace. I think Volvo, because of where we are today and our new business models that are coming, will go through this transformation faster. Mm-hmm. So we're not a big volume player. I think we're about 1% market share, but we've got enough size and scale that it becomes complex. So I think that this is a real, like I said on Tuesday, for me, it's so exciting. It also potentially keeps me awake at night as well, because like I said, I think the phrase I use, the company's going into a digital future and we've got to convert our Stone Age business model as fast as possible to that digital future. And the worst thing that can happen is all of us poor supply chain professionals are getting kicked to death because we can't actually execute this wonderful vision that the commercial business has. So it's both great, exciting, inspirational, and terrifying at the same time. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, it's just an average day in the office, Martin. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris Stiles from Nissan. So I just wanted to raise the topic of end-to-end visibility and digitalization as well with you. Now, maybe we're not talking immediately about online vehicle sales or subscriptions in this instance. I mean, you can give us some light on that if you think that business model is coming for Nissan as well. But as you have an end-to-end view as well in North America, have you seen some progress towards further connecting and visibility across that in order to kind of bring more real-time updates in the supply chain?
Yeah, I mean, Chris, to your question on kind of online sales and that shift to provide that service to the end customer, it seems like the dealers more than anybody has really kind of led that initiative. So I see commercials all the time, whether it's Nissan or Infiniti or other brands, where you can go online and you can order your vehicle and they'll deliver it to your door. So they're really, I think they took the initiative more so than even the OEMs on how to make that work to try and maintain some stability in the sales side. From a visibility standpoint, I mean, obviously connected services, connected vehicles is ramping up very fast. I know OEMs are at different stages of that. From our side, we do have products coming online now that are bringing that technology. So we're still working to understand what do we get out of it from a supply chain standpoint. Are we shifting more now from a RFID or some other type of tracking solution to where we can utilize these embedded connected service solutions already in the vehicles, not just to track them, but to know the status of the vehicle, to know the battery charges, to know the everything down to the vibration levels and things like that. Can we get to that point to where you can measure and really get a good feel for what's happening to the vehicle while it's in throughout the distribution process? So to me, that's just ramping up much faster. I think Martin hit it dead on. I mean, we're just trying to catch up on where we've been from a supply chain standpoint. We're really good at moving parts and metal. We're really good at that, but there's so much more we can do, which is exciting. But then the expectations on the other side as well, to his point about what keeps you up at night, obviously, our sales guys, they don't want to wait for cars. We don't have any inventory sitting around. So, it's really shifted from what, was a strong stock model, the past few years to now there's really a strong demand model. So, there's not as much appetite for customers to wait right now. So it's really trying to take advantage of what can we use those tools for where it makes the most sense and kind of get the quick wins. And
I mean, that sort of suggests in that sense that, I mean, the supply chain delivery side of it does become pretty strategic, a competitive aspect, because if your inventory if you can't get to the customers who want it, they're going to go somewhere else, right? So, and not necessarily within the same brand. So, especially now, that seems quite critical.
We've been having a lot of those discussions. Prime example I'll share here is if a dealer has delivery restrictions and that dealer doesn't want to receive deliveries over a weekend, well, maybe the competitor does down the street. So you may have just lost a sale because you didn't have the vehicle on that lot that Saturday versus, your competitor did. So yeah, I think it's something that we're all dealing with right now.
Yeah. So on that particular point, let me bring Scott in. On that sort of, you mentioned as a people business. So obviously the dealer side too, the people there to receive it. You have delivery restrictions, to Chris's point, or even just the competitive factor of getting the vehicles faster. Has that been a point for Glovis too, and something that you're trying to work with your partners on, speeding up?
Yeah, absolutely. Both at Hyundai Motor and Kia Motor, exciting new products, and also, as Chris said, we are in a low inventory industry right now. All dealers are watching very closely, and the pressure of the regional managers, of course, to move vehicles. You have a lot of eyes on the dwell time, whether it's at a rail ramp or a port facility or a factory. A lot of attention to it, but as we mentioned earlier, the old track and trace tools, the visibility tools, we're very transparent with those tools. We try to share those as far all the way to the dealer, so the dealer is able to see into our systems and see that expected delivery time. And the pressure is absolutely there, and compounded with our early discussions about the haul away capacity issues. There's quite a few reasons for a lot of us to be up at night. But the good thing is the economy has rebounded so robust in a way that the retail sales have been, very, very strong. As you started, Chris, probably stronger than anybody could expect it. And that puts a lot of pressure on outbound vehicles, getting finished vehicles to the dealer. And I echo what Chris said, when I think our associations probably have us recorded about only 50% of the dealers in the US. When I see the tally of all OEMs are receiving vehicles on weekends, that has to change. And I think this is certainly an environment we're going to see it change. And as Chris said, you have to have those vehicles arriving all weekend through, so that your competitor down the street isn't a leg up on you on inventory. So that could be a positive result. As we've talked about, any extreme challenge that we live through brings opportunity, and more pressure on tools that give intelligence and visibility, more pressure on network design, and all good things. Good for us to go forward, and we'll need it ahead. It doesn't look to be relieving anytime soon. The demand is very strong in the industry, and we'll see this for some time.
Absolutely. I'd like to switch to inbound for a moment, so bring Miguel back into it. So Miguel, not so much from the vehicle delivery side, but more visibility. I think has been also a big project for GM. I mean, if we were to look at outbound, of course there's also GM's been with OnStar. That was a long time coming. But if we look inbound more on visibility, what sort of progress have you made there, and what steps further do you see happening?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for the question. So actually, I really like the Stone Age comment from Martin, because it's a very, I think all of us as industry can relate to it. So I think some of these challenges, if you think about it, it's one thing that we probably need to start looking at, leverages between industries like us with consumer products, with retail technologies, that probably can exchange some information. But back to your question a little bit. So 3 or 4 years ago, we in General Motors, we made a decision to actually try to move from the Stone Age a little bit more to the current age, if you will. So we upgraded a number of our logistics services our logistics systems and software. And as part of that, we started with the venture of implementing our visibility platform. Certainly, we started with inbound. We made a lot of progress. And I think we've been around a little bit over a year after we launched. It's proven to be extremely useful. It's proven to be extremely interesting, but it's also proven to be interesting in the context of how do you connect with the Stone Age systems that you're talking about. So that whole ecosystem of new stuff and old stuff, it's an interesting element that I think we're dealing with. So far, we continue to evolve, and you were talking about outbound just a few minutes ago, but we're looking at it from a total logistics perspective. So from an outbound all the way to inbound, I think Chris mentioned a little bit of that, and we really want to make sure. And if you think about visibility as a whole, all of us that have been in the industry for a little bit of time in the logistics industry, that's been a little bit of panacea, kind of a holy grail. I'd like to see what my stuff is right now, with a click of a button, right? And even a few years ago, there was a number of conferences on how to achieve that. And I think we're getting there. The technology is there. I think it's a conversion, and just trying to make sure that we fully utilize that, combined with other elements and other analytics. So the one learning that I think I got out of this whole thing is that we always tend to see a tool as an end, right? But you cannot just keep combining the tool and the processes, right? So to me, if you don't have a good process to track your vehicles, to track your parts and do something about it, in reality, the visibility tool will not help you that much. So I think the more and better we combine those two things, the better. And that's sort of the journey that we're into, so-called the next phase, if you will, from a visibility perspective.
Well, as you say, we in our daily lives, we've come to expect such visibility in the things that we order and do in our lives, and I can imagine that's the same, obviously, in the supply chain. And great to hear that those steps are being taken on that journey. I want to turn to an audience question, and I think I'll direct this one at Martin Corner since it refers to what he was saying. And so the question, Martin, is: as changing consumer expectations and the shift to vehicle subscriptions grow, how will legacy IT systems adapt? Is a true digital revolution on the horizon? And actually, you did use the word revolution there. So can you talk about that from the IT side in terms of, we all know OEMs carry around these legacy systems, and for better or worse, and you can't just scrap them for many reasons, or usually. So how do you see that, particularly in the context of some of these new consumer models?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll go from company level to a supply chain in my answer. I think all the efforts and investment will be made on ensuring the commercial systems work for transactions, for example, for online sales, etc. And the money will be pumped into that as much as it's being pumped into actually the conversion to electrification. So where I take it back to supply chain logistics, I think the question is absolutely valid, and I don't particularly have an answer. But the reality is we always feed from the scraps. There's a capital expenditure shopping list at the start of the year, and logistics usually comes at the bottom. And this is why we end up having our legacy systems and our brute force and our Excel spreadsheets and picking up the telephone. But in reality, a connected value chain with connected systems is absolutely fundamental. And what we're trying to do is to put that front and center of the digital strategy from a logistics perspective on how we support the commercial transformation. And I think what I've asked my team to consider, and this is where, if there are any partners out there listening to this, is how can we take off-the-shelf solutions and integrate them with our structural architecture? Because I'm a big believer, actually, there's a lot of innovation out there in the supply chain world, and there's probably a lot of off-the-shelf systems that maybe we take as an operating expense and just attach it to our structuralized architecture inside. And we try and do it as simply as possible. So I think that's the big challenge. We move away from every time we want to make a change, it has to come in-house. The IT department in-house then have to make sure all the architecture is compliant with Volvo's way of doing it in this case. And actually we say, no, let's become more agile. And somehow as a big OEM, how do we act a little bit more like a startup in this sort of situation? So it's a huge challenge. And right now we're still in another area, we're in the old-fashioned world. But it's a great question, because the speed of change is going to force us to act differently in this context as well.
Absolutely. And I know, if you speak more to people on the IT infrastructure side, we'll talk a lot about APIs and making sure we can connect, microservices into the larger frame, into whether it's ERP or the backbone systems, find that way to be agile within those legacy systems and things. And it's interesting you raised that point, because as we spoke, there was also a question from someone highlighting that there are incredible technology out there from IT companies, and whether OEMs and LSPs are more focused on building their own solutions or using partners. So I'd like to maybe turn the question to Chris from Nissan, just to comment on that, because obviously the question there is whether the OEMs are or will look in-house to that, or are they looking enough at the market, or as Martin referred to, the off-the-shelf and how to integrate it. Maybe from Nissan's experience, how would you take that?
I think I would explain it like this. There's certain key, I would say, know-hows and expertises we would like to have in-house, but we're not there. So our plan is more of outsourcing models, finding those quick wins from an outsource standpoint off the shelf for the quicker wins, while we transition to bring the most important items and that expertise more in-house around analytics, data scientists. So we actually met with our vice chairman yesterday and laid out that plan of, we need this support now to go outside and hire some of these key services, but over 5 years, we can see a transition where we can develop and get the right people with the right experience and expertise in-house. But to me, it's not a plan that has an end or an end date. It just, with the way things are changing. It's a constant evolution. So we're just trying to see what can we take advantage of outside while we develop what looks to be critical that we should have inside in the next few years.
Absolutely. So we'll go for a last question here. So let's bring everyone back on screen and in the great kaleidoscope of talent that we have here from around the world. So the question is simple, but the answer is probably not. But it's really, Martin kicked us off at the conference talking about what an exciting time this is to be in logistics and supply chain, despite the crisis and despite all the challenges we face. But I mean, for you, in your roles and companies, what is the most exciting objective for you now in terms of, we talked about what keeps you awake at night from perhaps worries, but what's keeping you awake because you're excited about it? What's the white whale, we'll call it. Scott, can I start with you?
Thank you, Chris. What is the most exciting objective? We've spoken with some of our customers and the main core customers that you've mentioned as well. They're very familiar with the ambition of Glovis to grow into a true SCM, taking our strengths in asset-based on the ocean, growing and showing our capabilities on the inbound, showing our capabilities on multiple customer handling on the outbound. We're very much right now on a path for more direct operations at Glovis, more asset-based operations, acquisition of transportation, acquisition of warehousing. So it's really a transformable time at Glovis. And myself, I'm kind of parallel to the path. I'm an ocean guy to start with, but really excited to be part of the new generation of Glovis, which is a full SCM and all of the direct operations around it. We're really fortunate. Some of the companies right together with me on the panel, we're very proud to be serving in one way or another. And that's the exciting thing about logistics that I really see. You can either step in and help as a partner on a full logistics scope, or you can just come into a section or a segment that can help, and that's what I think is very interesting. You have to build talent in all sections of logistics, and that's why I think it's really exciting times at Glovis, and even for the industry, as I mentioned before, a lot of new players, a lot of new manufacturers even coming, EV startups that we've talked about, new relationships. It's going to be an exciting time ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Miguel, what's the exciting objective ahead for you?
Yeah, I think from a General Motors perspective on inbound specifically and packaging. So we've been transforming our area for the last 2 to 3 years, probably even more than that. And probably some of our viewers and partners have been witnessing that a little bit. So I think to continue in the path of transformation in the context of what are the new technology we want to implement, what are the new processes that we want to redo, and especially in relation to our partnerships with our key suppliers and key carriers and logistics providers, as well as what is the right organization that we have to set up to make it happen. That's really what's been exciting me the most, to tell the truth. And I think we have a long way to go. And if I combine these objectives with the pandemic that we're seeing right now, I think that worked in 2 different ways. One is that in some cases, it showed that I think we're on the right track. And in fact, for example, we're working in a very exciting data management, initiative. And it hit at the beginning of the year, right exactly when going through the virus in China, spreading the virus in China. It helped us tremendously. So that confirmed that we're on the right path. But there's some other strategies that we thought, hey, based on what we're seeing right now, we can probably reshuffle a few things here and there or redirect so we can see the new gaps and try to aim at closing them a little bit better. So I think it's a pretty exciting environment, and it's a little bit ambiguous. I understand, appreciate that, and it's a little bit aggressive as well in some cases, but very, very exciting to be part of transformation.
Fantastic. I'll go to Martin, since on my screen at least that's clockwise direction, and we'll move linear for one. So Martin, what's exciting you most, since you raised that right at the beginning?
Yeah, I think my answer will complement this convention, actually. I'll pay the convention a compliment. Actually, I think traditionally most of us OEMs, we design our own networks for our own flows, and we go to the market and we execute in that way. And actually, I'm convinced for this sort of transformation we're seeing today, I mentioned it on Tuesday, collaboration and working together is going to be so much more important. I'm pushing my organization to be outside in focused. And actually what I would say about the convention is, I think what the last 3 days have shown is there's a lot of brilliant people out there in our industry. I think everybody's been really transparent, and there are so many great ideas out there that we've picked up on in the sessions we've seen. So I think actually as an industry, if we can work together more, combine our brains and work together with this transformation, I think the sky's the limit. So actually that excites me the most through this journey.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad that we can play our role there too. Chris Stiles, what's exciting you the most?
Everything everybody mentioned is exciting. If you don't like puzzles, don't be in supply chain, because it's just a puzzle every day, right? So, but for me, to be honest, probably the most exciting is around people development, and really how are we developing our people to where they have a greater impact on the overall business. So whether it's new technology development, it's analytics development, it's upstream voices around duty and tariff that Martin mentioned earlier. We're developing tools to give a buyer, visibility. If you source that part from that country, here's all the downstream impacts that need to be taken into consideration. So getting the supply chain to have that voice that we haven't had before through the development of the people, so that when they speak, it's clear that they know what they're talking about. That's something that we're really pushing. So to me that's exciting. I think it's motivating for them, and even for the folks who've been here 25, 30 years. It seems like they're enjoying kind of that new take on what's their day-to-day going to look like. So that's exciting.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank everyone on the panel for all of the views that you shared, the insight. It was a really fantastic discussion, and I think gave our audience a lot to take away there. And frankly, like I said, lots of optimism and positive energy there too, to address even the difficulties that we're facing. So I want to thank each of you, Chris Stiles, Scott Cornell, Miguel Tavera, and Martin Corner. It's really been fascinating to spend this time with you. We've got another session coming up in about 8 minutes, focused on North America. So more to pick up there with Honda. And then we have our finale session at 6:30 UK, 7:30 Europe Central, 1:30 Eastern. You won't want to miss this. It's an interview that I'll be able to have one-to-one interview with Bo Anderson, the Chief Executive Officer and President of Yazaki in Europe and in North America and Central America. Just before I close, I'm sorry to end on a negative note, or not a sad note, but I do want to acknowledge this, because as Scott mentioned, this is a people business, and there are people who care about us, and we have gotten word of the sad passing of Bill Schroeder, who is one of the founding members of AHA, the Association of auto haulers in the US, which is also a partner of ours in this event. And Bill has sadly passed away after a battle with the coronavirus. And so we did want to extend our wishes and our sympathy to his family and his friends. And we know many people in the industry that he worked with, and he was obviously also a good friend of ours. So I did want to extend that message and share in that grief with everyone, and the reminder of the times that we're in, and the key work we need to be careful about. So we'll sign off for now on this. Thanks again to everyone in the panel, and again, our hearts to Bill and his family. And we'll see you again very soon.